Hi, I'm Benji from Singletrack, and today I'm here with the new Vitus E Mythique LT. So what is this new bike? Well, in a nutshell, it's a brand new full power e-bike from Vitus with 160mm of rear travel, 170mm fork up front, alloy frame, mixed wheels, so that's 29 at the front, 27 at the back, and it comes with a Bafang M510 motor. The Mythique name may need a bit of explaining or clarification for those of you familiar with the acoustic Vitus Mythique, which is a 140mm trail bike. The E-Mythique LT is not the electric version of this regular Mythique. The LT suffix denotes that is longer travel. This e-bike has 160mm of travel at the rear, and this E-Mythique LT VRS model has 170mm travel forks up front. And I, for one, am very pleased it is not just a basic Mythique turned electric. A full power e-bike should have full travel, loads of travel, 160mm, 170mm, bring it on. It's just the way it's meant to be. What is Mythique about the E-Mythique LT is the price, and the price and performance combo. It's an entry-level e-bike, clearly, but it's also an entry-level e-bike that can be taken to proper mountain bike terrain. There are 3 models in the E-Mythique LT range. There's the VR for $3,299, the VRS for $3,899, and the range-topping VRX for $4,399. You can see the full specs of all those bikes on the story on our website. See the link in the description below. So what about the existing Vitus E Mythique range that has a similar amount of travel, 160mm kind of enduro e-bikes? Well, those are still going to be around, but those are the bikes that are paired with the bigger mainstream brands and the bigger motors. So you'll get your RockShox and your Fox and your Shimano motors on those. The E-Mythique LT goes to the alt kind of brands. You've got your Bafang motor that we'll go into in great detail shortly, and the SR suspension and things like the TRP brakes. What's the remit of this new E-Mythique LT then? Well, it's steep stuff. It bears the enduro tag, but enduro has kind of become a bit meaningless these days, especially on e-bikes. The E-Mythique LT is clearly about riding steep stuff, steep climbs, steep descents. Of course, it can happily meander along any old mild terrain. All mountain bikes can do that, but its raison d'etre is technical terrain and repeat runs of the fun stuff. The oft-mentioned power hour hot laps of your friendly neighbourhood woodland mess-about spot. With any e-bike, the thing we all talk about first and foremost, understandably, is the motor, quickly followed by the battery, specifically what size battery does it have. So yes, the big news here is that Vitus have gone with Bafang for these bikes. We haven't seen much Bafang stuff on mainstream bikes before, but I think that's about to change. Bafang have been around for as long as anyone in the e-bike game, and the E-Mythique LT models all use their M510 drive unit paired to their own battery. Vital stats time. The Bafang M510 kicks out a top Newton meters torque of 95 Newton meters, with a peak power watts of 550, and like colloquial terms, that's like often expressed as 400% of whatever you put in, like 4 times you. The battery has 630 watt-hours capacity. It can be charged in the bike in situ or removed and charged externally. You'll need the key to remove the battery from the bike to do that. I'll go into the power delivery of the motor shortly. Onto the user interface, the controls, the buttons and the display type stuff basically. Now this has always been, when I've had a Bafang bike, the weak link in the system. Used to get controls near the grip that would get in the way of your brake levers and not play nicely with dropper remote levers, and the screens kind of look like the original Mark I monochrome Game Boy displays. Not good. Vitus clearly spotted these problems and have worked with Bafang to really improve things massively. The bar remote near the grip is a simple but effective 3-button affair. An up button for more power, down button for less power, and the third smaller button at the middle side is the on-off button. And whilst it's on, it also acts as the info scrolling button for the display next to the stem that cycles through your various stats, range, cadence, trip distance, etc. And this remote near the grip, hooray, plays nicely with brake clamps of any flavour and normal shifter style dropper post lever remotes. The display itself is actually one of the best e-bike displays I've seen so far. It's a good size, it's not too small, not too big. It is colour, but it's not a mess of colours. It's actually a real Goldilocks style display. And kudos to Bafang and Vitus, whoever made it happen, but we have battery power as a percentage rather than blocks that you don't really know what's going on. I mean, who has their phone set to be a decreasing bar picture? No one does. We have percentage because that's what we need to know. Hooray! The display shows you what mode you're in. There's 5 modes in total: Eco, Eco Plus, Trail, Boost and Race. Now, I've already mentioned the vital stats of the Bafang M510 motor: 95 Newton meters of torque, 550 watts of peak power, 400% of U and all that type of stuff. But as is often the case when pontificating on about e-bikes, numbers don't tell the whole story, which is a bit of a cliche, but it is true. How that power is delivered and when it is delivered is absolutely vital to the ride experience of these things, and it's that which gives each motor its particular characteristics when you're actually riding the things. For once, for a motor manufacturer, Bafang are pleasingly transparent about how the power assistance is delivered. They have graphs and everything. Again, check out the store on the website if you want to pore over the numbers at your leisure, geek-styly. Fundamentally, the absolute maximum assistance, that 95 Newton meters and 550 watts, is only accessible when you're in the race mode setting. The same 550 watts of peak power is acceptable in the mode down, the boost mode, but it comes in a bit later. And the top torque of the boost mode is 85 Newton meters rather than 95. Now, those of you who've ridden e-bikes for a while know that while all these top power ultimate settings get all the headlines like 95 newtons, 85 and 500 and whatever watts of power, you don't use them very often. When you're in top power mode, it's maybe for your power hour blasts. What you will find when you actually own one of these things and want to go out for your usual weekend type of ride is the trail mode that you're in almost all the time. Now, it's trail mode that is the most important mode. On the Bafang M510, trail mode gives out a maximum of 75 Newton meters of torque and 495 watts peak power. And it's the trail mode that has the most interesting and significant power delivery method. You don't get trail's peak assistance until you are inputting about 250 watts or more yourself. And the assistance is delivered in an exponential curve. So, pootling about, soft pedaling, 100 watts or something, will get you a pretty meagre amount of assistance. Putting in some effort will get you a lot more assistance out. It's this power curve that dictates how the system feels to ride. It's going to be very interesting to see how this Bafang system compares to the main players. Come on. Oh, good bike. Good bike. The final 2 settings that I've not covered are Eco Plus and Eco. Eco Plus gives you a peak of 412 watts with 55 Newton meters of torque, and the lowest Eco mode gives you 35 newtons of torque and 302 watts of peak power. There is also off if you're insane. Onto the frame itself, the bit that everyone glosses over while we focus on newtons and watts and pricing and stuff. What does the frame have? Well, it doesn't have a flip chip. It doesn't have through the headset cabling, it doesn't have any carbon, and it doesn't have accessory bolts under the top tube. Whatever. But what does it have? Simple, internally routed cabling, bottle bosses on the down tube, a down tube protector, a sump guard, a motor cover, which is another thing that Vitus badgered Bafang to actually produce. Plenty of dropper seat post insertion. This large we have here, you can fit a 210 in there as a future upgrade. Only comes with a 170 as it is. And it's generally a really sorted out bike. Okay, onto some suspension geekery. The leverage progression is 27%, which if you don't know percentages, which is fine, that just means it's really progressive. The leverage force begins really high, and that means it's really easy to get that shock moving, combined with a trunnion mount, really low breakaway force, and it ramps up quite quickly, quite high. So there's loads of support in the mid-stroke, and you're not going to bottom the whole thing out just by jumping it off a curb. It will deal with big old stuff, big landings really well. And should you want to put a coil on there in future, it's perfectly ready to accept one. Anti-squat, which basically is the force that copes with pedal bob, the anti-squat never really goes over 100%, which essentially means the rear suspension stays supple and tractiony no matter what you're doing with the pedals. It's an e-bike, so it's not overly concerned with ultimate pedal bob efficiency. This system prioritises grip, traction and comfort. Onto the geometry. Well, starting front to back, head angle 63.5, seat angle 77.5, bottom bracket is 26mm BB drop. The reach on this large is 476. The chainstays are 445mm, and the seat tube, quite dinky, nice, loads of insertion. Even on this large, it's only 440mm tall. How has Vitus hit this impressive price point? It's a combination of a canny choice of alt brands and own brand stuff. They're alt brands like Bafang, Suntour, TRP, VTireco, own brands from Vitus, Nukeproof and Brandex. The two big brands here are SRAM for the drivetrain and WTB for the wheels. In terms of spec, this bike doesn't have any surprises, disappointments or restrictions to it. There's nothing on this bike that you're going to want to change after a couple of rides or you're going to have to need to replace because it's holding you back. Everything on here can do the job and do it really well. And what's more, this bike has oodles of upgrade potential. This bike you can have for a while, a few years, and replace bits and bobs as you go, save up for some fancy forks or something like that, but you don't have to. This bike could be with you for a long time. Right, let's do my best to reel off the spec. It's almost all highlights, so let's try not to miss anything out. We've got sticky V tyres, we've got SRAM NX genuinely wide range Eagle drivetrain. The cranks on the Bafang, Vitus have asked Bafang to go back to the drawing board and give us some nice looking cranks that are 165mm long and don't stick out miles below the pedal hole there. So pedal strikes much greatly reduced. Brandex 170mm dropper post, Nukeproof saddle, RockShox Deluxe Select R rear shock, battery cover, down tube protector, Nukeproof headset, Nukeproof stem, good length, Nukeproof bars, good width, Nukeproof grips, actually nice and comfortable. Finishing it off, SR Suntour Duralux 36 with a mudguard. Bespoke mudguard that isn't attached with zip ties. It's got 4 bolts holding it on there. Removable for when, as if you'll ever remove it, but you can remove it if you want, but it's there, ready to hit the dirt. So there we have it, the new Vitus E Mythique LT, available to order right now, vitusbikes.com if you want to read more about it, all the spec charts, geometry, the graphs, all that sort of thing. We've got a pretty in-depth story on our website right now. That's all from me. I'll see you next time. Head over to singletrackworld.com. Goodbye.